Hello everyone and welcome to my digital unit resource website. So my website is called Lingo for Language Learning. My website focuses on resources for English language learners. So here I have a little introduction on myself, information on how I got into the education field and my experience. Also our introductory video from earlier on in the semester. And then I go into a little bit about our 7th grade classroom and explaining that we will be using this website to find fun and creative ways to work together. And that students will use various online communication mediums to practice exchanging ideas on many topics. And students will practice communicating through writing, reading, speaking, and listening. I believe English language learning students thrive in acquiring the language when there is a rich diversity of communication that occurs in the target language, and that having students exchange a variety of personal and academic ideas can increase their success in developing English language skills. The 3 ELD standards I will be covering in the website are exchanging information and ideas with others through oral collaborative discussions on a range of social and academic topics, interacting with others in written English in various communicative forms, and offering and justifying opinions, negotiating with and persuading others in communicative exchanges. Some contact information on me, a fake phone number for now, and a little inspirational video, hopefully to help students stay motivated to never give up, especially when it comes to learning a new language. Okay. Next, we go into what is English language development. So I give a brief overview of different types of English language development classrooms and programs, different ways to approach English language development. But really, I want to focus more on my thoughts on English language development and the importance of these classes. So I think English language development classes are more than just classes English language learners take. They have the power to either greatly help students learn how to acquire the language skills needed to operate effectively in their environment, or to frustrate students into feeling that learning a new language is just too big of a task for them. It's too challenging. They can't do it. Developing a new language can take several years. I think research usually points 3 to 7 years for most English language learners. Given the wide range for acquiring the English language, it is imperative to structure the content covered inside English language development classrooms intentionally. These classes have an obligation to students to prepare them for successful lives inside and outside of an academic environment. And here I have a video of Roberto Guzman, who goes over his three-part system to teaching English without teaching English. So he kind of goes over helping students really critically think and know how to verify and kind of proofread the information they come across. He also goes over the importance of using real-world issues, current events, and issues that affect a student's day-to-day lives as part of the curriculum inside an English language development classroom, just because it really helps keep students engaged in the material that they're learning, and students end up acquiring the language without even realizing that they're learning English while they are being exposed to different texts in English, videos in English, or having discussions or conversations in English within the classroom. Then he talks about the importance of reading and writing also in English language development classrooms. And he also talks about helping students learn that their focus really shouldn't always be on learning all the answers, but instead of learning how to ask the right questions, and that making mistakes isn't a negative thing, and that students can greatly benefit from making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. And also my favorite quote by Van Gogh, "What is done in love is done well," because I do want my students to know that I will pour my heart and soul and all my love into my class with them. Next, we have useful links for parents and guardians. I have an instructional video on how to translate Google Chrome websites to whichever language they need. It goes step by step instructional video, and some tips and insight that can hopefully help parents or guardians see what their English language learning students are going through in school and how to best support them. And also a link to the U.S. Departments of Justice rights for parents and guardians so they know their legal rights when it comes to the educational system, resources for students, some tips and tricks to help improve their English language skills, a short and sweet little podcast that's only 3 minutes long daily, and a YouTuber called Teacher James ESL that has plenty of videos on English lessons. He's pretty fun also. He's funny. Silly guy. And we also have some resources on a growth mindset, something that I really hope to instill into my students. All right, so digital interactives. Here I've attached a Quizlet School vocabulary game. Really, I just love Quizlet for learning vocabulary or key ideas in other subjects as well. The nice thing about learning vocabulary on Quizlet is that it has an audio feature, writing and reading practice, and it has a lot of games too that they can help their writing and identifying vocabulary in their language and in English. Then we have some English language games. It's more basic vocabulary for beginning level English language learners. And we have the BBC English Learning site that offers lessons for students who are just starting off in their English language journey to students who are moving all the way up into intermediate or towards advanced. And lastly, Duolingo, which is something that I personally use to try and learn Italian. And I let students know that it's a really fun and interactive way to try and learn a new language. Okay, so now we have assistive technology. I have 2 resources here. Bookshare, which is a website that turns almost 1 million book titles into an audiobook. This is great for students who are either visually impaired, have dyslexia, or just struggle staying focused while reading, and that audio kind of helps them. So students from struggling with either of those things can really be helpful to listen to their book in an audio format. And we have Headspace, just because there is a lot of connection tied into students being stressed when trying to learn a new language, along with balancing their core coursework as well. It can be stressful for students to try and juggle all of that. So having some time for meditation and mindfulness can hopefully be helpful to them. And then we have some information on the importance of internet safety, and some of the links we have here are a game on the FBI Safe Online Surfing Review, so to kind of review key points of online safety, but in a game format. A link to cyber safety, so it's a website that has information on cyberbullying, identity theft, viruses, and other online safety issues. And something that I really loved from one of our modules, which was the Google Scholar link. So it's a great search engine that helps students find credible sources. And then we have 2 videos, an evaluating sources for credibility video, and a funny, silly internet safety tips made specifically for teens. All right, so here we have our graphic organizer assignment. So this assignment is based off a reading. It's a reading on Common Lit, and it's on failure. And it kind of discusses a different way to view failure. After reading the article, students will come up with 3 to 4 points that they found interesting from the text and have a response, whether it be an opinion about the text or questions that they have about the text, any response that they have. And then they'll get together with a peer and discuss the text, discuss their responses that they had to the text. And they will write their peers' responses in the last column in their triple entry journal. So we also have an option to download the graphic organizer and our rubric for that graphic organizer and to download it. And the ELD standard that associates with assignment, exchanging information and ideas with others through oral collaborative discussion on a range of social and academic topics. Okay, so next we have assessments. So the assessments would be involving a persuasive writing assignment. So first I would start off with a persuasive writing survey that gives me a better idea of how familiar students are with persuasive writing, and that will inform how much information I need to present to students about persuasive writing. If they're pretty familiar, if the majority of the class is already familiar with the steps to writing a persuasive essay, then I could probably focus more time on research skills or grammar, just depending on what I gather from the survey. Then they would write their persuasive essay. So we would start with a lesson on persuasive writing, do some group research together, and go ahead and write the persuasive essay afterwards. And the next assessment I have would be on their persuasive essay. And hopefully, depending on how well students do on their persuasive writing essay, I could either continue a second lesson on persuasive writing on a different topic, or if students have mastered persuasive writing, we can move on to a different writing form. Okay, so then we have our learning menu assignment. So I decided to make my learning menu on a person of interest to give students a lot of options. I love that this appetizer, entree, dessert gives students really a lot of options to engage in the assignment. So the appetizer option would be write out a pros and cons list for both conducting an in-person interview and researching a fictional character. Or if they would prefer to instead work with others, they can get into a group of 3 to 4 students and discuss the pros and cons for both conducting an in-person interview and researching an actor or actress. So they're first going to try and decide between the two options for the entree. And they have different options on how they want to come up with the options they choose. Next, the entree option. So for option 1, after receiving permission from your person of interest, they will prepare 8 to 12 questions for their interview. Your questions can be basic information about the person of interest, or discovering more about their thoughts, ideas, or opinions on different subjects. They will then record a 2-minute interview and upload it to YouTube as unlisted, and they will post the YouTube link under the entry submission section below. The second option that they have for the entree is after deciding which actor or actress they find most interesting, they will search for 8 to 12 pieces of information about their person of interest that they find interesting. They will then type up their findings on a Word document and submit it under the entree submission section below. So again, more options for students depending what they're most comfortable with. And lastly, the dessert options are either the students on a classroom Padlet can post a painting, drawing, or photograph that represents the person they interviewed or researched, with a paragraph summary of what they learned from interviewing or researching that person of interest. Or they can do also on Padlet, post an oral presentation on Blabberize that summarizes what they learned from interviewing or researching their person of interest. So here is where they would submit their assignments. Here is the Blabberize website linked for students to use if they choose that option, a short video on how to use Blabberize, and our classroom Padlet. And lastly, we have our lecture and guided notes. So I decided to do a pronunciation lesson on the 2 TH sounds. So very often in English language development classrooms, this pronunciation aspect of teaching is frequently overlooked. Many times people assume that pronunciation is picked up over time, but with much research behind pronunciation, and the importance of it, they do suggest, researchers do suggest that pronunciation be part of very specific lessons. So specific pronunciation points that students possibly struggle with. For example, the TH sound, which is the one I just decided to do my lesson on. So the TH sound, the voiced dental fricative and the unvoiced dental fricative versions of those is something that usually native English speakers don't even hear a difference between. So first we start off with going the difference between the two sounds. So the voiced is activating the vocal cord, like in the word the, and the unvoiced version of it is just the air coming out, like in thank and thank you. So I've attached the guided notes that also go along with the lesson up here. So we go with a listen discrimination practice where students identify the difference between the two and fill in key vocabulary words just so they can focus more on the lesson and less on scrambling to write everything down. We come up with a TH word wall that has a list of both types of TH words using both sounds. An additional resource called Youglish where students can do additional pronunciation practice. Our diagram where they will label the vocal tract, more specific information on the two different TH sounds. And lastly, doing a little skit using both the unvoiced and voiced versions of the two TH sounds, and a closing question that asks students, after learning about the two TH sounds, can you think of any sounds in your native language that are tricky to tell apart? Why or why not? So that is it for my digital unit resource website. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.